All right, so we're going to get to some examples here in just a second, but a couple other notes we need to discuss. First off, the turning point of the parabola is called the vertex. So for instance, when we've got our U-shaped graph that is seemingly decreasing forever, at a certain point, it starts to change directions, and that's when the vertex is formed right here. So this point would be a vertex, and when that vertex is the lowest point of the graph, which it is in that first example I just drew, it is called a minimum. So this vertex, it's important to know, minimum and vertex are kind of talking about the same thing for this example. But then if we drew a upside down U, that's seemingly increasing forever, but then changes direction, starts heading downhill, this too is called a vertex, but since it's a highest point, it is called a maximum. But again, vertex and maximum really referring to the same thing here. Now, what's really important in this lesson is to be able to understand how to calculate the vertex given an equation. So I'm going to give you the formula, and at first, this can be a little confusing, but it's not. So the vertex is an ordered pair. It's an XY ordered pair. So to get the x coordinate, we use the formula negative b over 2a. Of course, we know b and a come from the standard form of the equation. To get the y coordinate of the vertex, you're going to take negative b over 2a and you're going to substitute it into the original equation. So it's referred to as f of negative b over 2a. All right, so this is the formula you're going to see me reference most of the time. But if you're a step person and that formula confuses you, I wrote the 2 steps over here to help you find the vertex a little easier. So to find the vertex, you can use the negative b over 2a formula to find the x coordinate. And then step 2, you're simply taking that number that you got from the negative b over 2a formula and subbing it back in for x. So if you haven't gotten all that, feel free to pause, but let's see this in action here. So remember, our goal is to be able to graph a quadratic and be able to find the vertex. In this next set of problems, we're going to do exactly that. We're going to find the vertex. So the directions say determine whether each function has a maximum or a minimum. That was in the last video. And then we're going to use the negative b over 2a formula to find the vertex. So the first thing I always like to do on these problems is list out my a, which is 4. You'll notice there's no x term, so that means there's no b and there's no constant. So it's c. Sometimes you'll see people do this, actually write it out plus 0x plus 0. But we don't really need to do that because it doesn't exist when it's 0. So the first thing we'll notice from the first video, since a is greater than 0, that means we're going to have a happy face because it's a is positive. So the shape of this graph is going to be a U. And so why is that important for this problem? It's because the problem asks whether we have a max or a minimum. Well, right here, our vertex is down here at the lowest point of the graph. So this means we have a minimum. And then we want to calculate the vertex for this graph. So we're going to use the formula negative b over 2a, comma, f of negative b over 2a. But again, don't be confused by this. Sometimes it looks confusing. All we're doing here is to find the x coordinate of the vertex. We're going to take the opposite of b, which is just 0. So the opposite of 0, of course, is just 0 divided by 2 times a, which is 4. Remember, this gives us the x coordinate. 0 divided by anything is 0. So the x-coordinate of the vertex is 0. I'll write that here kind of off to the side. And then to find the y-coordinate, what we're going to do in the second part of the formula is we're going to take that number we got, which was a 0, and we're going to plug it back in for x in this f equation. So simply all we're doing is we're going to go back to this original equation, which was f of x equals 4x squared. And instead of f of x, we're doing f of 0, which just means we're plugging in 0 for x. And just so happens in this example, we also get 0, because 4 times 0 is 0. So there's your vertex. All right, so let's do one more example, and then I'll have you try the last one. List out your a, b, and c. Your a value is -1. Your b value is 4. Your c value is -3. So again, first thing we see a is negative. So since a is negative, that means we have a frowny face. We're not happy. So this tells us our vertex is up here at the highest point, which means we're going to have a maximum. Always try to remember box and circle your answers, especially when you have a lot of work going on in the problem. So the second part is to determine the vertex. So we're going to use the formula -b over 2a to give us our x-coordinate. So in this particular case, it's going to be -4 divided by, times 2 times -1. So the x-coordinate is 2. And then to get the y-coordinate, we're just going to plug in 2 back into the original equation. Do have to be careful here on this one. If this left-hand side of the equation confuses you, you can just ignore it. We're not really doing anything there. We're just showing that instead of f of x, it's f of 2. But be careful here. I would encourage using the calculator to double check your work. 2 squared, or order of operations, is 4. But then you have to multiply it by that -1 out front. And then just a little bit of simple math from there. I'm getting 1. So the vertex for this problem is 2, 1. All right, I would encourage you, pause the video. I'm going to put the answer for this your turn up here in about 5 seconds. So there's the work. That is how you find the vertex of a quadratic without graphing it.